Sean Wheelock, you have recently been scooped up, so to speak, by Titan FC as well to do the commentary on their December card. I quite like this kind of mix-up because it's going to be yourself and Faraz, and he's a great commentator. I actually really like listening to Faraz Al-Harbi. I love the way he breaks the fight down, he gives his analysis. It's beautiful listening to him. Are you quite looking forward to working with him?
I'm really looking forward to working with him. This is someone I've met a few times as a commentator when he's been with fighters, and like you, I'm a fan of his work as a commentator. I think at its core, whether you're talking about MMA, you're talking about football or American football or field hockey or netball, it doesn't matter. At its core, what we call play-by-play in the United States and Canada, what's called basic commentator, right, in the UK, is about the who and the what. And what we call color commentator analyst, what you would call summarizer, is about the why and the how. And what Faraz does with the why and the how is spectacular. And I try to bring the who and the what. And I'm really looking forward to this partnership. I'm really looking forward to Titan. I'm so thrilled that they reached out to me. We have a one-fight deal, but I think all parties are really hoping this turns into a long-term deal. And I'm counting the days to December, and the fact that it's in my hometown of Kansas City, really excited to get back to work on television, really excited to get back to this, and I think this is a great way for me to get back at it in MMA.
Well, I was going to say as well, it is a good way for you to get back, and it's also apparent. Didn't you work with Titan in the past? So it's almost like you got back with them in a way.
I do, and this is really cool, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. So the demo reel that I put together to be hired at Pride was Titan Fights, and the founder, the original owner of Titan, is somebody named Joe Kelly, who I still know and I see around Kansas City. And Joe was a boxing promoter, and then my first combat sport was boxing. I was a commentator, I was a referee in boxing, and I knew Joe Kelly, and he would put on local shows. Joe moved into MMA, and a full decade ago, Joe and I started talking about maybe we should televise some of your MMA shows. He was doing them at a historic fight building called Memorial Hall in downtown Kansas City, Kansas. And we were able to get his fights on a local cable television station called Metro Sports. And it was some fighters who were unknowns at the time but have gone on to some nice things. Bobby Volker, Eric Marriott, Rob Kimmons, L.C. Davis, who just fought in Bellator.
Yep.
So it was a really good base. And I did a number of shows for Joe Kelly in the original Titan, went to Pride, went to M1, did the Affliction shows, was at Bellator, and now under Jeff Aronson. It's amazing, and here I am back at Titan. And it's obviously a much different Titan. It's a much different industry. I have a new boss in Jeff Aronson, but yeah, there's something really special about that. It's kind of a completion of full circle, and the Titan is still a very big name in MMA in Kansas City, my hometown.
Well, I was thinking Titans it's got bigger in the past, say, since Jeff took over. They've really turned things, Lex as well, and all the team there. They've really turned things around. That big, the deal with the UFC Fight Pass, that's huge, and the fact then with that deal comes more shows. It's 8 to 10 shows a year. It's really exciting times at Titan FC. It's evolving in a way that's quite fast, and I think their reputation it just keeps going up.
It does, and the biggest difference, and by no means is this a criticism of the Titan that I was at a decade ago with Joe Kelly, but it was a local promotion. They did shows in Kansas City. They branched out. I think we did one show in Topeka, Kansas, which is about a 60, 70-mile drive from Kansas City, but it was basically a Kansas City promotion. And as Jeff Aronson has reshaped Titan into his own image, it's become a national promotion. So not only are you seeing fighters from outside of the Kansas City area, you're seeing them have fights outside of Kansas City. And the Fight Pass deal for me solidifies Titan's standing in the MMA space. It is a major organization now. And the affiliation with the UFC, having the deal on Fight Pass, it's phenomenal. So many people have reached out congratulating me on the Titan deal and understanding just what a big deal this is. The Titan is a major level promotion. They have some really big fighters. They have an interesting philosophy in that they want to find the next stars for the UFC, but at the same time, they also want to have stars in their own right. So somebody like Tim Elliott, who came from the UFC, or somebody like Desmond Green, who came from Bellator, but maybe could be going to the UFC, or Tim Elliott goes back to the UFC. So it's a really good mix of stars. It's not just a developmental side. It's not just a developmental league, but at the same time, it's not a league where, I remember this guy, he was good 8 years ago. They've positioned themselves really well under Jeff Aronson, and I'm thrilled to be a part of that. I like everything that Titan is doing.
I was going to say, your experience, your kind of working with several big promotions in your kind of repertoire, it just brings a great added, let's say, bonus to Titan FC. You are a bonus to them, really, because what you're going to bring is something that they might not have been able to get anywhere else, because what you know and what you have is just going to bring something to Titan FC, I feel. It's something that, you know, I think for fight fans, they're going to get excited about. You know, it sounds daft, but for me, it's the whole package. I think the commentators make a difference. The referee, if they have the right referees on, the announcer makes a difference. You know, the arenas, the way everything looks, I think the whole package for me is what makes a fight. And it really, you know, if it's not right, I'll happily tell any promoter anyway. I think there's just something not right. And I think that what Titan are doing is they're trying to have the full package, not just the fights that are great. I think they're trying to build around the fights as well, in the sense of the commentators. Now, with your experience
I appreciate you saying about that, by the way, mate. You're not just saying that because my wife's English, right?
No, I'm not. I
really,
honestly
really appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
No, honestly, man, what you've done in the past, you know, it's. You know, I've heard your voice for years. You know, because I watch a lot of fights. I don't just watch the UFC. I watch, you know, any kind of fight I can get my hands on, really. So it's quite exciting for me to, not obviously just to have you on here, but to know that you're going to Titan FC. It just solidifies what I know that Titan FC are doing, is they're just wanting to constantly improve. They're not wanting to sit still. They're not wanting to be static. And like you said, you know, in the past, they had Bobby Volker, who recently just went and won he just won at Shamrock FC. He got a first round knockout against Mike Ettis. And that's in four fights in a row now. That's 4 wins in a row. He could be going back to the UFC, you never know. Like I say, LC Davis, he just headlined the last Bellator card, didn't he, against Joe Warren? You know, sadly it didn't come through for him. Joe Warren is he's a machine himself. But they've produced great fighters. Let's go back a little bit further. Let's go back, like you said. I was going to say, let's go back in time a bit now to, you were saying about the early days with Titan FC. Let's go back a little bit further to the beginnings of MMA with, I want to touch on this subject because let's talk about Art Davey. He's a gentleman that you came across and you kind of did a book with him, basically, is the best way to put it. There's a lot of stuff to ask you. I have to say, there's a lot of things that you've done, and I have to bring it all up. Sorry, it's going to happen. I'm going to ask you questions that you might have been asked already, but what a bloody idea that was, and what an experience that must have been.
Well, I appreciate that. I like to tell people the book came out of my friendship with Art Davey, rather than a friendship evolving out of the book. And I was with Art this past weekend. We were in Syracuse, New York, at an MMA fan fest, and I said to Art over dinner, I said, you know, of everything that I've done in my professional career, I'll put our book at the top. I felt so good about that book. I mean, we worked a long time, and people ask me, was I the ghostwriter on it? No, I was a co-collaborator. Art and I wrote that book together. We were full writing partners. In Art Davey's voice, it's his memoir, it's his first person, but we wrote that book together. And our publisher wasn't too chuffed. He was getting a little dismayed. We were about 6 months late past our editorial deadline, but I kept saying, you know, this book will be ready when it's ready, and I'm not going to turn in a manuscript until Art and I are 100% satisfied. And the response from the MMA community has been phenomenal. Also, and what I didn't anticipate, people have told me, you know, I never really watched MMA, but somebody told me about this book and I read it and I was fascinated. There's something on a human level when you read the story about a guy who gets an idea in his head and it's revolutionary, and everybody tells him it's the stupidest idea they ever heard, and he doesn't listen, and he quits his job and he goes all in with his life and he dedicates 4 years, and he creates something that evolves into the UFC and really launches the sport of MMA. Now, obviously, before November 12th, 1993, the first UFC, there was mixed match fighting, and there was strong-style pro wrestling, and there were those hybrid shows in Japan, and there was catch-as-catch-can wrestling in the UK and in North America, and there was Vale Tudo, but there wasn't MMA. And so many people say, you know, we were basically doing MMA in our gym in the 80s, and a lot of people were, but it was Art Davey who took everything that was out there and was able to package it together and find Horion Gracie and get Horion Gracie and his family support and form that business, and then find Bob Meyerowitz and Semaphore Entertainment Group as his pay-per-view provider, and put all of the pieces together to create the UFC and to create, again, the sport that I think rightly stands, or the event that rightly stands, is the birth of mixed martial arts. And Art's so humble, he's so amazing, and one thing, too, that I think is so cool about Art, and we were just talking about this over dinner this past weekend, is Art was 44 or 45 years old when he launched the UFC. It spent 4 years of his life, but this is someone who fought in the Vietnam War. He had success as an advertising executive. He had made a lot of money. He had already had a pretty full life by then. So this wasn't some wonder kid at 19 or 20 years old. This was a guy who had been accomplished in a lot of areas, had some successes, had some failures, but he was still able to see an idea and he could not let it go. It's really an amazing story, and even more so when you think that Art Davies sold the UFC after UFC 5, and so many people who live and breathe this sport, who are the hardest of hardcores, have no idea really who Art Davies is or his story, and this is the guy, this is the creator.
Yeah, that is the thing about the sport. It's not crazy for me because obviously I know the history of it. For example, we've had Campbell McLaren on the show as well before a few times, a good friend of ours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, when Campbell was there, and I don't know if you've read our book, Is This Legal? You can buy it in the UK and worldwide.
Oh, I've got it already.
The best price.
I got. Someone sent it. Someone told me. Someone sent it to me. A very good friend of mine. Before it was released, because he's in the MMA circles, and he knew about my kind of passion for MMA, and send it over to me.
I'm so pleased that you read the book, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. I really hope that it was able to tell the story, and there are no half truths, there are no embellishments, and that's what I said to Art. If I'm going to do this and give basically over a year of my life to writing this book, we're going to put out the definitive record. It's his memoir, and memories are funny. You and I could go out and we could have a couple of pints, and a month later, we're going to recount the story, and we're going to have slight differences in our story.
Yeah.
But so it is through Art Davies' first person. But with that being said, I independently verified so many things. So there is not a false claim, there is not a false note, there is not an embellishment, there is not a lie. Art gives credit where credit is due, including the Campbell McLaren, and I think above all else in our book, we really take out the myths of the origins of MMA. Some people's roles were known, some people's roles weren't known, some people's roles were completely forgotten, others were completely exaggerated, and it's the true story. And I'm so proud of the fact, not just that we told Art's story, but that we told it with 100% truth and 100% accuracy. And as I said, I went to so many people. I talked to the fighters. I talked to Big John McCarthy. Talked to Art's ex-wife, Kathy Kidd, who's a major player in the book. I wanted to get independent confirmation. It was important to me that just because it was a memoir, it still had to be factually 100% correct.
And what did that mean for you? What do you take from this? Because that's a big thing to take on anyway. And from a personal point of view, when you look back at it, like that's a pretty huge thing in my opinion, what you did, and the fact that you spent that much time and you went over it, you did all the work, and obviously put the work in as well, but you didn't have to. There's nothing you weren't related in any way to the original UFC, is what I mean, like UFC 1.
I was a kid who watched. My only relation is that I was one of the 86,000 people who actually watched the pay-per-view. I didn't even pay for it. I was a kid. My mom paid for it. She paid the $14.95, but that's as close as I got watching it live in Shawnee, Kansas. There
you go. So that's what I mean. How did it feel that the fact that you did it anyway is huge. So what do you take from it personally? What kind of memory will you have from this kind of, because the stories you must have spoke with him about and found out about must have been just priceless in himself, but for you personally, what do you take out of it?
Amount of pride for a couple of reasons. One is the fact that Art's role is known. It's out there in the public domain. Whoever's read it has read it, but it's also out there. If somebody wants to know the true story, all they have to do is read the book. It's out there. In the pudding, as Art Davie would like to say, meaning it's out there to the world. It's public record now.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that we did not write a glamour piece. We didn't do a hatchet job on anybody. We didn't embellish anything. That we have this historical accuracy. And Art easily could have said, you know what, Sean, this isn't the story I want to tell. I have an axe to grind with someone, or I want to inflate my role. He's not that type of person, because believe me, there are plenty of people he could have gotten who would have written something that wasn't true, that settled old scores or made Art Davie look to be better than he was. And we present the real Art Davie, and I'm extremely proud of that. As we were writing the book, I kept saying to Art, you cannot project ahead. You don't know how this turns out. When you're sitting there in October of 1993, a month out, you don't know if this is going to be a success. You don't even know if this event is going to come together. So you have to have that mindset. And I'm hoping when you read the book, and I'm hoping everybody read the book, there's that sense of tension that I know how this ends, but I'm not sure. Not that I'm James Cameron, and not that our book is Titanic, but I've thought that's my wife's favorite film, and I've thought about that. When you go and you see Titanic, you know the ship's going to hit the iceberg and they're going to sink, but you're still captivated for 2.5 hours of watching that great film, and that's what I wanted to do. Even though you know that everything's going to turn out all right, I want you to be worried until that first punch is thrown, or in this case, the first kick by George.
Yeah, I was going to say the kick.
Exactly. Until then, I want you to worry as a reader. I'm just not sure how this is going to turn out. I told Art about this as I was writing. I'm a big reader of wars, nonfiction books. I love reading American Revolutionary history from British authors and from U.S. authors, and I love reading World War II. And just before I started writing the book, I had read a book on the American Revolution. And again, my wife is English. She's from Odense, Hampshire. And I'm reading, and the book was so spellbinding. It's nonfiction, but so spellbinding, and it's so much tension. And I said to my wife, I think the English are going to win. And it made me forget the history of my country because it was such a page-turner. And I wanted to bring that same philosophy, that same ethos that you know how this turns out, but you're caught up in the moment as a reader and you forget how this turns out. And I mean, I'll ask you as a reader, I hope that you got caught up in that tension, the fact that the television deal wasn't done until a couple of hours before the show, that it literally almost fell apart a couple of hours before UFC 1 because Art had not signed the final television deal with Semaphore Entertainment Group. That's
what got me, was the fact that it was everything before it, almost like everything was in place but then everything fell out. That's what got me, because obviously I knew a bit about everything that was going on anyway because of Campbell McLaren, speaking with him. But I suppose when you read the book, you just kind of get sucked in a bit. You kind of forget. You do get a bit lost, and that's the good thing about reading that book. I kind of get. I'm a little bit giddy, like a little bit of a giddy kid. For example, when UFC Scotland was on, me and Mike went up, and Campbell McLaren came over. He brought his sons over, and he took his sons around Scotland. That's what he was doing after the fights, and we got to meet him, and it was just, for me, I was shocked. I was just I don't know how to explain it. I was a bit taken back. I was like, that's Campbell McLaren. I was like, bloody hell, he's like one of. And the thing was, we were at the weigh-ins. It was at the UFC weigh-ins, and me and Campbell were stood there at the front, and Mike's there too, and we're talking to Campbell 10-15 minutes, just chatting away. And we go and sit down. A couple of people went, and they were speaking, because we know a few people from going to the UK events, and they're like, who was that you're speaking to? I said, it's Campbell McLaren, and they're like, who's Campbell McLaren? And when we spoke and explained who he was, I tell you what, all of a sudden everyone got up and wanted to get a picture with him.
Yeah, it's and I think we do a great job of representing Campbell's role, which was vital in the book. And one thing that was very fortunate for me is that Davie is a prolific saver. So we reprinted in the book, there is the first fax. And I think people listening to this under the age of 20 have no idea what a fax is. A fax is from a fax machine, but Art Davie had saved it. And there's the reprint in the book when he's, Dear Campbell, thank you so much for our conversation. I'll be sending you this information. Art Davie, as we wrote in the book, called Campbell cold. Had it not been for Campbell McLaren, it wouldn't have been on Semaphore Entertainment Group. Art Davie was determined, and he was going to get it on television one way or the other, but there certainly would not have been the relationship as there was, because Campbell McLaren, as a vice president of acquisitions for Semaphore Entertainment Group, went into the office of his boss, Bob Meyerowitz, who was the owner and the CEO of the company, and said, you have to believe in this. Bob Meyerowitz, and he's tried to revise history a little bit, didn't even go to the first UFC. Bob Meyerowitz did not like it, did not believe in it. Campbell McLaren saw the genius in Art Davie's pitch, and he was Art Davies' champion, and he made it happen at Semaphore Entertainment Group. Campbell McLaren deserves a huge round of applause for being able to have that foresight and then have the tenacity to stand up to his boss, who's telling him, nope, you're wrong. And Campbell says to Bob Meyerowitz, you're wrong. This is going to be a hit. You have to trust me on this.
And I think the book is a hit in itself, and I think the work that the two of you did together, Art and yourself, it just really, really put a footprint in history for MMA, because like you say, people might not know who Art was, and it's there now. It's there for people in 10 years' time to go and read. As much, I know the UFC have done like little video clips of the original UFC stuff, but the book itself, I think it's something that it'll stand the test of time, and I think that's what we needed. We needed the book to really give people an idea of how important the little relationships and links between a handful of people that was needed to kind of bring it all together. Now, another bit I'm going to talk about with you is I've got a lot. Do you know what? We're going to have a talk now, and I'll have to get you back on again because there's so much to talk to you about.
That sounds great to me.
All in
favor of that, absolutely.
How's the commission going? The commission work that you're doing, are you voluntary commissioner? Is this, I believe?
Yeah. So it's interesting, and some of the language was confusing. And when my contract wasn't renewed by Spike and I left Bellator, a lot of people thought that I had resigned Bellator to become the commissioner of Kansas. Like this was the commissioner of the National Football League. I know you're a big American football fan.
Yeah.
And it was a lucrative job. The person who runs it day to day is my friend Adam Rohrbach. He's basically the executive director. It's his full-time job. Then there's a board, and it would be like being on a member of like a board member for a not-for-profit organization.
Yep.
That's what we have in Kansas. It's through the state government, the Department of Commerce. There are 5 commissioners who are appointed by the governor, and we're not paid. We're really there for the health and the safety of the fighters. We cover professional boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, and MMA in the state of Kansas. So Adam Rohrbach, in his function as the executive director, he's dealing with the venues, and he's dealing with the promoters, and he's dealing with the licenses. We're dealing with the health and safety, and we're not paid. And when I started this process, which was back in February, and I was still commentating Bellator, I spoke to my good friends and business partners, John McCarthy and Rob Hines, 2 of the best referees, and the 2 best referees in the sport. Guys, is there a conflict of interest? No, not at all. I spoke to Scott Coker and Corey Schaefer, who runs the regulatory affairs at Bellator. No conflict of interest. I spoke to Spike. No conflict of interest. When I had my interview with the governor's office of the state of Kansas, we addressed it, no conflict of interest. Because as a commentator, I'm involved in the sport, but I can't directly influence the outcome of any events.
True.
And as the commission member, I'm just worried about health and safety.
Yes.
So I'm worried about making things better. So if I'm not receiving money and I'm not dealing with promoters or revenue or handling money, just looking out after the well-being of the fighters, no conflict of interest. So with all of that stated, I love it. We had a commission meeting last week. It's funny, I don't even get reimbursed for gas, so I'm spending my own money to be a commission member. It's about a 140-mile round trip that I drove, but I love it because we sit in a conference room at the state capitol, and it's like-minded people, and we're talking about how do we make mixed martial arts and all combative sports, including professional boxing, safer and better in our state of Kansas. And the fact that you're appointed by the governor, although I'm sure Governor Sam Brownback has absolutely no idea who I am, but still you're appointed by the governor, it's a pretty cool thing. And it's a real honor. It's a genuine honor. And it's about as close to being altruistic as I can be, is that I feel like I'm doing something for the greater good on this.
Yeah.
It feels really good. And, in my state of Kansas, you and I were talking about amateur MMA, what we love to call AMI MMA in the United States. And so much in the state of Kansas, because we're not California, we're not Florida, we're not New York, we're not New Jersey. And I say New York because of all the professional boxing and kickboxing and Muay Thai. The lifeblood of combative sports in our state is on the amateur level. I would guess that and this is a guess, but I would say 4 out of every 5, if not 5 out of every 6 sports in Kansas are either AMI or have an amateur component to them. So you're getting a lot of these small shows, and we're trying to look out for those. We're trying to look out for the 19-year-old kid who's making his amateur debut in front of 150 people in a hotel ballroom, as we are for a world championship fight if Bellator comes back to Kansas, or if the UFC would ever come to Kansas. We're trying to look out for the health and safety of everybody, making the sport safer, making the sport better.
Have you reached out at all to Mark Ratner to speak to him about about the position itself, for kind of maybe advice about the role?
Well, I spoke to him because I was under contract to Bellator at the time. I didn't reach out to Mark, so Corey Schaefer is Mark's equivalent at Bellator.
Oh,
I
right.
spoke to Corey,
Yeah.
but since I got the job, I absolutely spoke to Mark Ratner. I saw him at the ABC convention in San Diego in July, and I called him up 2 weeks ago, just getting his input on it. And universally, people have said, "Good for you, Sean. You're someone who cares about this sport. You've worked in this sport a long time. You were a fan. You got in it the right way." And good for you. It's not even advice. It's just almost, we're glad you're involved in this. We're really happy that you're involved, that you're willing to give some of your time, and it makes me feel very good. It makes me feel very good if I can impact it a little better. I deeply love MMA. It's a huge part of my life. My 10-year-old daughter Ellie, who trains Muay Thai, she doesn't like to get on the mat, but she loves to stand up. We go to a lot of shows, and now that I'm on the commission, the one perk I get outside that hand signed letter from the governor is that she gets to be the scorecard collector. So she's so excited, and she runs and gets all the scorecards. And John McCarthy has said, "You got to be fast. Don't let the judges think about changing their mind." So she gets in a sprinter's stance, and she runs and gets those judges' scorecards. That's my perk. But it's just so great to be involved in that level, and it's really fun. I mean, earlier today I was talking to Mike Mazzulli, the president of the ABC, who runs the Mohegan Commission, and it's nice to be able to have conversations on that level. And as much as I love being a commentator, and first and foremost I'm a commentator in MMA, but it's nice to be seen as not just a commentator, having another role.
Yeah, your passion goes deeper than just that role. Yeah, that's the key. We've had Mark Goddard on here before, and a gentleman called Ben Cartledge. Now, Ben Cartledge is an MMA judge, and obviously Mark Goddard's a referee. But the work they're doing...
Mark's great. I don't know Ben. I've worked with Mark. I first met him in M1 in 2008. Great guy.
Yeah, it's absolutely top dollar he is. And the work that the pair of them are doing is with the in the States it's the IMMAF.
Right.
So obviously it's a UK MMAF over here, and what they're doing is fantastic. They're doing obviously Mark's doing the refereeing seminars, so that he's I think he's going to Croatia. I think it's this month. He's doing seminars all around Europe to help improve the standard of refereeing. So his job isn't just turn up on a Saturday to referee. He's doing a lot more than just meets the eye. And the same with Ben Cartledge. He's doing judging seminars. He's getting people in and teaching people about the judging side of things, and giving them a lot. Giving them a breakdown. It's great the work that's going on that people who are general fans don't have a clue about, that's getting done to help improve the sport, like yourself doing the work for the commission. It's these little things that we need to happen. It takes time, so it's only early days, it's baby steps still, the sport, but these steps just help the sport greatly.
No, I completely agree with you, and the fact that people who are in this sport and care so much about it, like obviously you and I do, that they're giving of their time. As I say, I know Mark, and it's great that Mark is so heavily involved in that. And you mentioned Ben, who I don't know, but that he's so involved in that. Really, if you think about it, officials don't set out to do a bad job. Referees don't mean to do a bad job. Judges don't mean to turn in a bad scorecard. Usually that happens because of poor training, or in some cases, zero training at all. That you simply don't understand the criteria of what separates a 10-9 from a 10-8 round, or you really don't understand when you should or shouldn't stop a fight, or the foul procedure, or what constitutes a grounded opponent.
Yeah.
And you get it through training. There are so many who want to do a good job, they just don't know how to do a good job. Maybe it's equivalent to driving. My 10-year-old would love to drive a car, but she's never driven a car because she's only 10. So even though her intentions to be a great driver would be there, the reality would probably be far different. And unfortunately, that's the case because, the way MMA grew, it snuck up on a lot of people who were outside of the sport, especially a lot of boxing people. They thought MMA was a fad. It was going to disappear.
Yeah.
And suddenly MMA gets equal, and then it very quickly overtakes boxing in a lot of states, a lot of countries around the world. And so it was trying to get, it's the proverbial square peg in a round hole. Well, hey, mate, you've been our boxing judge for 25 years. We want you to judge MMA. Yeah, but I don't understand any submissions, what they're doing on the ground. Don't worry, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And far too often that was the case.
It was,
I know it's happened in It happened in the U.S. It happens everywhere.
Yeah.
So in many cases, these people want to do a really, really good job. I would like to think in virtually all cases they want to do a good job. But unless they're properly trained, odds on that's not going to happen. And that's kind of the next wave now is we come up on this 22nd anniversary of the first UFC, and our sport keeps growing, is let's now get people in who really want to be in. You know, you look at the early UFCs. You had fighters coming in who really didn't understand any aspect of fighting other than what they were trained in.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's still the case with certain judges and certain referees. And the group is getting smaller. We're getting better education, better training. And as my friend Rob Hines, the great referee, likes to say, evolve. You know, we continue to evolve. Rob Hines will always say to people, you know, does anybody fight the way they did in 1999? No, absolutely not. Then why are you refereeing and judging the way you were in 1999? And that's a really good point. That drives it home. You have to keep up with the sport.
Yeah, you do. It is. It's one of them things, and that's what I think is great that Mark and Ben are doing, especially in the UK. They're doing it not just for the UK, they're doing it around Europe. So it's a collective thing they're doing to build up the standards and levels in the European game. So I think that also incorporates more confidence, a confidence in fighters competing, because they got the knowledge that the referee they have overlooking the fight has more knowledge, so they feel a bit safer. And I think as well, if they know the judges are kind of, I'd say, clued up, that also gives them a bit more confidence when it comes to the scorecards if it does go to a decision. Because if it was 2-1, a split decision or whatever it was, they lost, they could feel a bit more confident that the judges got it right, rather than, you know, we've seen some decisions which are pretty poor, but you know, I think it's a huge thing. Little things like that will help fighters be more confident in the cage.
There's no question about it. If you look at like Premier League football, or if you look at the National Football League, those athletes know how well trained those officials are.
Yeah.
They might make mistakes, and they probably will make mistakes, but their training is impeccable.
Yeah.
And fighters should have that same mindset. They should go in. Everyone's going to make mistakes. No one's going to fight the perfect fight.
No.
But to know that the training is there, that these people really understand what they're doing. You know, I do the podcast called Let's Get It On with Big John McCarthy. We do that every week. We were talking about the 10-10 scorecard that was turned in at UFC Fight Night at Saitama Super Arena. John McCarthy has said repeatedly there's no such thing as a 10-10 round. Yet on a UFC show, a judge turned in a 10-10 round, and that led to that fight being a split draw. That's affecting people's incomes and livelihoods and impacting lives.
Huge.
It would be almost, it's the equivalent. You like the NFL, you told me off air.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
The equivalent of in the NFL, if you're San Diego Chargers, score a touchdown. Let's say Phillip Rivers has a nice keep, and he runs it in for 2 yards, and the official said, it's only 2 yards out. We'll give that touchdown 5 points instead of 6.
Yeah.
That's almost what that 10-10 round is like. It's ludicrous.
Yeah,
People wouldn't stand for that in the NFL, and yet somehow we stand for that in MMA.
It is, and I said, we spoke to Ben. We said I don't think enough judges are held accountable for their score, and I think they should. I think a judge should have to basically stand up and say why they gave that reason. But that's. Do you know what? That's something that's probably not going to happen. To be fair, commissions usually stand by.
You know what? No, I will say this. So Mike Mazzulli, who runs the Mohegan Commission, and which is it's Native American Commission, so it's sovereign land. It's a sovereign commission, but it's in the state of Connecticut, and he's the newly elected president of the ABC, and I proudly voted for him. I had the state of Kansas vote. I proudly voted for Mike. Mike has those meetings, and I've seen them before. He'll go around to the judges fight. All right, you scored this fight 30-28. Tell me why. And he's not challenging them. He's just asking to explain.
Yeah.
All right, well, this was a split decision. The two of you had it 30-27 one way. You had it 29-28 the other way. I want to hear from both of you. It's not saying you're wrong, you're right. It's saying tell me why. Same with the referees. Mike will say, all right, you stopped that fight in the third round, ground and pound. Tell me why. Mike might say, okay, good stoppage, I agree. I just want to hear what you say. It's not criticism, it's just getting people to think about it.
Yes.
I know they do that in the Premier League, I know they do that in the NFL, but so many state commissions, the majority, so many national commissions, and in England you still don't have a national commission.
No, we
have
don't. No.
The equivalent of what you have for boxing. At the end of the night, here's your money, thanks, I appreciate you coming out, and then you just turn your back on it. People need to be held accountable for their actions. They need to think about their actions.
Yeah, I think it would help them as well. Like you say, it does help if they can explain why, because then they can maybe sit there and go, maybe I got that wrong. Actually, I don't. And maybe.
Or even if I got that right and articulate why you were right.
Yes.
You know, it's important to think about when you're right as well as when you're wrong.
Absolutely.
But just to think about it, I think, is the key. Not just take your money and go on home and worry about the next show.
Yeah, it should take pride. They should be taking a lot of pride in what they're doing, because their name's going down there. It's on that piece of paper. So I think it is vital. And the sport, like we said, it is baby steps. It's still growing. It's far from where it's going to be in the future. You know, it's nowhere near the complete.
Absolutely.
But I quite enjoy being part of this kind of process at the moment. You know, that kind of growing stage. I quite enjoy being in it, and obviously you do too. And you said that you have a weekly podcast out as well. You know, and you, Big John, do it. How did you and Big John? Why did that come about? What's
You know, John and we just started talking. It's just mutual respect, and I had worked the Second Affliction with John McCarthy as the referee, and I've always been someone. Actually, when I was a soccer commentator, I started in Major League Soccer year one in 1996. I just always went. It's probably my polite Midwestern upbringing, but I would always go to the officials, introduce myself, or the people who I had known. I would say hi to, shake hands, say hi to everybody. And when I started doing MMA, I carried that over in MMA. I did that in the boxing that I've commentated as well. And John started working more and more Bellators. He worked very few Bellators the first 3 years, but started working more and more. And John and I would have a little chat, and then one night we said, hey, you want to grab dinner? And we're very like-minded people, and we just enjoy each other's company, and we hit it off, and our wives get along extremely well, and he's almost like a de facto uncle to my little girls now. And out of that, a friend of mine who's a serial entrepreneur in the Art Navy mode, a guy who's been very successful, started a lot of different things, calls me up out of the blue, says, Sean, you ever thought about doing a podcast? I said, funny enough, I have. He said, would you like to do a podcast? I'm launching a podcast company. I said, yeah, can I do it with John McCarthy? And he said, yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me? Of course you can do it with John McCarthy. And that's how it started. So we've been doing it about 7 months now. The show has grown every single week. John's really finding his voice. I love hearing his opinions. They're so well stated and well thought out. And even if people disagree with John makes you think. So, and John loves people who have a counter argument. He just wants it to be well thought out.
Yes.
It's called Let's Get It On Podcast.com. I was just asking my producer. We get downloads for something like 86 countries weekly, which is insane to me. But that doesn't show the popularity of John or myself, our podcast. That shows the popularity of our sport of mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
That we have people from Gambia listening, and we have people from Oman and Peru listening. That's really phenomenal. But it's letsgetitonpodcast.com. You can get it through iTunes and Stitcher, or you can just go right to our website from anywhere in the world. Free of charge. You can find all of our program archives. We don't charge for our archives or anything else, and it usually goes about an hour, 5 hours, 10 minutes. We do it once a week, a post every Friday, and I'm having the time of my life doing the podcast.
Yeah, it is great, the work that you've done, and what I like about Big John McCarthy is, even on Twitter, he does exactly the same. You know, he'll answer. It seems like he answers every person that sends him a tweet, it looks like, because he's always replying to people's tweets. But like you say, he will come back and make you think with the answers. Like, I'll read what they say, and then I'll read what he come back with, and I go, it's pretty good, that's a pretty good answer.
He's very thought out. John never says something unless he believes it and he means it. If he doesn't have an opinion, he won't say something. And that's one of the many things that I really admire about him. He's the opposite of one of those know-it-alls that has a little bit of something to say on everything. John will say something when he strongly believes what he is saying, and it's good to listen. It
is, yeah. It's great, and I think the pair of you do gel well, and obviously because you get on as well, it helps. I think, but it comes across when you listen to the recordings that you've done. You can see that the two of you work well together, because any two people can sit and chat to each other, but if it comes across well, it's a different matter, and I think it does. I think it works well. And obviously, the more you do, the more kind of, like you say, the more you get set in your ways with it. The more you get set in you're more confident and the more relaxed you get by doing it. Same with me and Mike, where we first did the first one. I think we probably stuttered all the way through it, but it's just time and just doing it over and over again. You just got to get used to it.
When it's finding your voice too. And I know one thing that John was really concerned about is what are the referees going to think? And John's very sensitive about the refereeing in the judging community, and I don't want to openly criticize anybody and make somebody feel bad, but at the same time, John knows that if he made a terrible mistake, he's fair game. So when he does criticize something like the 10-10 scorecard at the most recent UFC that was inside Thomas Super Arena, or we've talked about referees' mistakes, he does it in a very respectful manner, almost like a teacher trying to correct a mistake. There's none of this snarky attitude of, oh, that person's terrible, that was awful, what a joke. It's a very educational process of this person can do better, here's why they can do better, because he knows that they're not out to make a mistake. Absolutely. He also knows that even though he hates it, he's going to make mistakes too. That's just part of the industry.
Yeah,
we're all going to make mistakes. I keep waiting for my perfect broadcast. I've come close. I've never had one, and I'm never going to. But I have the optimism I will every time I get on. I think this will be it. This will be the perfect show.
Yeah, no, I've tried that. I've done a lot of editing.
Does not exist.
Yeah,
it doesn't. 10 rounds. You think it's there, but it's really not there.
No, it's not, mate. It's not. Do you know what? It sounds as well, going with Titan in December, it seems that this year things have actually turned out pretty well to come at the end of 2015 for you. I think 2016 is probably just going to keep going for you as well, Sean. And what I'm going to say is, I'm going to have to get you back on before the Titan card comes up. We're going to have to talk about the fights that are going to be on the card, and we'll have to talk a bit more of a chat about other things as well in the MMA world and about yourself, if you don't mind.
No, I would love that. I'm an open book, and I pride myself in being very accessible and always being very, very candid.
Right, before you shoot off, before I get rid of you, basically, how about, can you let people at home know how they can access you social media-wise? What kind of social media outlets can people tune in to speak to you with?
Yeah, and I really pride myself on being responsive. I'm on Twitter, and I have a lot of UK followers, which I'm really proud of, and that's because for so long I did the World Football Phone-In on 5 Live in the UK, a show that's still going on without me, but it was just time for me to leave on that program, but I had a lot of fun. But some of my earliest Twitter followers were off of that program, and I think I've converted a few football fans into MMA fans as well in the United Kingdom. But I'm on Twitter at Sean Wheelock, and it's SeanWheelock. Also, Sean Wheelock on Facebook. If you see a beautiful 10-year-old girl in her Muay Thai stance, you know you found the right Sean Wheelock on Facebook. And the podcast, Let's Get It On Podcast.com. Again, it's Big John McCarthy and me. And anybody who's interested in the book, you can find it in bookstores, but I want you to save your money. Go on to Amazon. You can get it through any of the Amazon worldwide sites, from the UK site, the Canadian site, from the US site. Go on Amazon. That's generally going to be your best price. And the book is called Is This Legal? The Inside Story of the First UFC from the man who created it. You can just type in Is This Legal and Sean Wheelock, or Is This Legal and Art Davey in the search box, and you will find the book. And I always try to get back to everybody. Sometimes it takes me a little while, but people write me, hit me on Twitter, email me. If they want to send me a Facebook message, I really pride myself on being responsive.
And we will, as usual, ladies and gentlemen, I will get a picture up onto our Facebook page with the links, obviously, for the Twitter and the Facebook, and obviously as well, I'll do a separate little thing about the book as well. I'll do a little post about the book for people to jump onto as well, to have a read of it, because I do suggest you all have a read. I'll probably actually read it again, if I'm honest with you. Now that we spoke about it, it'll play on my mind, so I'll be like, do you know what? I might pick it up again and have to have a little look over it. Sean, it's been great speaking to you. Honestly, for me, it's a bit of nostalgia because of your kind of your links to MMA and that. So it's been a pleasure having you on, sir, and I really do look forward to having you on again.
Oh, I appreciate it. Anytime you want me on, you do a great show, and it's been a great conversation, a great interview. So the pleasure is all mine. Thank you.